Hi, everybody. So, in recognition of the fact that not everybody is working on the same platform in Class Notebook, whether it be the browser or the desktop app or the iOS mobile app, I thought I'd make a short video outlining some of the things that you can do mostly in the app that you can't do in the browser. So, there are, I think, about three things that I want to highlight for the desktop app and then the browser. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the iPad app and essentially what's available on that and what's not available on that. So first things first, the zoom function. So I'm going to go into the desktop app, and on my tracking pad on my laptop here, I'm just going to put my cursor on the page, and you'll notice I can quite easily zoom, right? So you'll be able to do this in the apps on an iPad or a tablet just by pinching the screen. But if you go into the browser, sometimes you will not be able to zoom. So I know some people, depends on the computer, but I actually can zoom on it using my tracking pad. But if you have a mouse, it's not going to let you sometimes, and it's just an overall pain. So one way you can get around that if you like the browser is just to use the zoom in the browser if you want to zoom in on stuff. But otherwise, the app is a little bit more conducive to zooming in and out in kind of a free-flowing way. Again, if you're using the app. One of the other things that you can do in the app that you don't have as much functionality with in the browser is you can do a lot of stuff with pictures that you're going to be inserting in there. So you see I have a big list of stuff I can do in here. I'll go to the browser. Not as much stuff here. I can grow, shrink, but it's a little bit limited. And a big thing I can do in the app here is I can set it as a background. So you'll be able to do this on an iPad as well, but in the browser you can't set picture as a background. You have to go into the app. What that means is that when I do that, I can type on top of the picture. That comes in handy when you're putting in any kind of resources or worksheets and you want to have students insert text on top of that, so it's nice and organized. Again, you won't be able to do that in the browser. One of the other things you can do in the app as well is you can force sync. So I have a whole video on what force syncing means in terms of distributing work, sending student work, but you cannot do that in the browser. So anytime you want to force sync, and the browser itself is pretty good for syncing, but sometimes it has its issues. If you want to force sync to ensure that things have synced, you got to be in the app. You got to go to right click on this, sync, and sync this notebook. Again, look in the FAQs. I have a whole video on what force syncing means. Again, you can do that on the app on the iPad too. It's just by pulling down the screen like that in the iPad, and that will essentially force sync in the iPad. Okay, so a couple of things about the iPad app. So you'll notice here that I have a dictate option where I can basically have a little bit of speech to text that works in the PC and in basically the browser app too. So you'll see dictate and then browser or our app. I can use dictate. That's not available in the iPad. So that's one thing you don't have in the iPad app is this dictate speech to text option. Another thing that you don't have would be the manage notebooks, right? So if I click on manage notebooks, it's basically going to bring me to the same page as in here, or I can go into manage notebooks, and I can do a lot of stuff with student sections. I know Matt Pesnidi has a lot of stuff about how you need to go into these kinds of sections to change them. All that manage notebook option is not available in the iPad app. Okay. And then the last thing I want to say too is that when you do work in the app, right, as awesome it is to force think things, the iPad app and the PC app can sometimes shift into a work offline mode. So you just want to make sure that you're force syncing as much as possible. It is a little bit more manual, but I think it's more effective in terms of making sure that you are syncing and getting those notebooks working. So there are a couple of distinctions between the PC app, between the browser, and between the iOS mobile app. Those are just some elementary ones to get you started and to let you know on your class notebook journey.